Okay, so let's begin. I'll start by introducing myself too and giving a visual description of myself. My name is Jody. I am a light-skinned, summer tanned, East Asian, non-binary person. I am wearing a black hoodie today with a black and white keffiyeh, and my hair is in a braid. And I'm joining from Toronto or Tikaranto, which is Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Wendat, and Mississauga land, and subject to the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Covenant. And today, in this care circle, we will be gently entering into an exploration of our relationships with plantcestors, ancestral remembrance, land, and the language of our own bodies. And what is plantcestral remembrance? What is the memory that our bodies, lineages, and the land hold? How does the land communicate with and through us, despite the ruptures and losses our lineages and landscapes have endured? And these are some of the questions that will guide us in our exploration today. And we're really excited to have Layla here with us to lead us through that. So just briefly, an overview of the flow for today and what we'll move through. So we're here, introductions, and talking about why we're gathering. We'll move into a check-in and optional breakout room activity after this. We'll have our session with Layla K. Feghali on plantcestral roadmaps, and that will be the core of our session and our gathering today. We'll have a break in there, and then we'll take a longer break after that. And then we'll move into a practice-based conversation, some space for reflection and speaking with one another at the end before closing with some announcements and farewells. Some of the access supports that we've got today, the slide deck and recording will be shared after this to everybody who's registered, and you'll have access to that. And just a reminder that if you are sharing any of the practices that we talk about today or that you learn through this gathering with your community, and yeah, we really welcome you and encourage you to do that. But just to credit the folks who are part of the CarePod team and to credit Layla, and to, yeah, just to name where this work is coming from. And for chat support, if you have any questions or concerns or things that come up through the gathering, give one of us a shout in the chat, and just know that we might take some time to respond via either chat or audio. If you'd like your share in the chat to be read out loud to the group, you can start your message with read or read. And I think Mira will give an example of that. Yeah, thank you. We also have two ASL interpreters with us today. Their names are Audrey and Terry, Audrey McCann and Terry Hayes. You can pin them on your own screen, and we'll also have them spotlighted for everyone throughout. When we move into the breakout room activity, we'll be creating a group that includes ASL interpretation. So if you would like to be added to that group, please message either one of the ASL interpreters directly through the chat. And when we'll also have a breakout room for folks who don't want to, or who want to be in a quiet breakout room for personal reflection. So if you would like to be in that quiet room, you can add quiet to your Zoom name. I'll remind you of that in a second. Live transcription is also turned on via Zoom, and you can enable that at the bottom of your own screen. And then emotional support, we'll talk about that a bit more in a second, so I'll leave that for now. And finally, last but not least, show up as you are. So we have breaks, but feel free to take additional breaks as you need, move around your space, tend to your own body, and whatever you need as we move through this today. Okay, next slide. The DJN Care Pod is a soft, regenerative space for dreaming and designing liberatory cultures of care. We're holding space today as a team. On the next slide, you'll see our photos, and we're also on camera here. But the team is myself, Karina, and Denise Shante, and they'll also introduce themselves as they come on. So on our next slide, today we have emotional support being held by Miro SK. And if you've been to our gatherings before, yeah, you'll have met and encountered Miro's skillful and thoughtful tending presence. So yeah, Miro, I'll invite you on to say hi and give a brief description of yourself and how you're holding this role today, if that's okay.
Good morning, everyone. Gratitude in advance for any patience if I stumble on my words a bit. My verbal processing is still coming online, but my name is Miro. My pronouns are they, them, and for a visual description, I am a white-bodied, non-binary femme with a shaved head and brows right now. I have an orange scarf on my head, an assortment of asymmetrical silver earrings, a gold nose ring, an orange shawl, and a maroon leather tube top-ish thing. I'm sitting on a cream-colored couch with a soft green light behind me, a bit in my true alien form today. And my presence here is because we recognize that as our body, mind, spirits carry the marks of the oppressive systems we gather to upend within and around us, that connecting more deeply to them, especially within conversations around land and within community, may surface unexpected emotions, sensations, and memories. So I'm present to offer compassionate one-to-one space via breakout rooms or chat to affirm, validate, and process whatever may be present for you today. My role also recognizes accessibility as emotional support. So during the gathering, I'll add support by way of sharing questions and information via the chat, as well as noticing and uplifting messages from the community. I'm really grateful to be sharing space again with you all today.
Thank you so much, Miro. And yeah, as always, really appreciating your attention to accessibility and collective access as part of emotional support. So yeah, grateful to have you here. Very grateful also to have Victoria with us today, who will be holding down tech support and really, yeah, making everything possible for us to be able to gather in this way across time and space. So thank you, Victoria, for being here. And then, yes, finally, we have our guest practitioner for today, Layla K. Feghali, who Karina will also introduce more fully in a few minutes and yeah, later on. So I'll save that for you too. But yeah, really, really grateful to have you here as well, and for all of the conversations and collaboration that's led to this point. Okay. As we transition into the rest of the gathering, I wanted just to take a moment to ground us in this political moment. And yeah, as Miro mentioned earlier, these conversations around land and community today are also taking place against the context of witnessing and resisting many ongoing genocides around the world that have been going on for months, for decades, in Palestine, Sudan, the Congo, Tigray, Kashmir, Kenya, Haiti, and elsewhere, which we can always trace back to land and extraction, and the death drive of colonialism and capitalism, and how those play out, and separating people from land and land from people, and from lineage. And so I, yeah, say that because all of our CarePod gatherings now over the past many months have taken place against this context. And so from gathering to gathering, we really are holding these questions about escalation and about collective risk and movement building, and how we can connect our responsibilities to take part in anti-colonial struggle where we are, and also to connect those struggles internationally and across borders too. Yeah, while also holding on to our belief and our grounding in collective care as a necessary part of movement building, and how we do these things together and in relationship. So on that note, I wanted to read a short passage from a zine called Gatherings, which was created by the Hyphen Collective. Is a bringing together of conversations about solidarity and collective action across Swana movements and communities. And this was I think I encountered Layla in the zine as one of the conversation participants before we had even met in person. I picked it up in a little bookstore in Montreal called Maktaba. And there's a quote in here that sort of feels like a perfect encapsulation of a lot of the themes of this gathering itself, of this moment, and yeah, these ideas of practice and care. I don't know if it's on a slide actually, but maybe we can drop it in the chat. If not, okay, cool. Yeah, we'll drop it in the chat in just a second. The passage is, so from a conversation between Layla and Ali Kat Leeds, called Solidarity, Cultivating Relationships with Place, Land, and Culture. I think in a lot of our movement spaces, our rhetoric is about land and water, but our consciousness is not. Land is a thing that we are trying to free, but it's not a relationship that we are actually taking responsibility for and stewarding and being inside of, when that's actually what it is, what it's been for our ancestors. Everything we're talking about is sort of the shift from a paradigm where we have the right thoughts or ideas about something that relate to liberation. Instead, what is the consciousness or the way of being and liberated reality that we need to recenter? One that's defined by us, by our own ways, our own people, our own culture. One that's self-determined and not informed by colonialism and all the ways that we're in constant response to it. How we've internalized it, how we think, how we relate, and even how we become free. So thank you for holding space with that passage together with me, and as we enter into this gathering. And now, yeah, we're gonna just carry that with us into this next part. We'll have some space for you all to meet each other and have some conversation. So we're gonna do group check-ins in breakout rooms, and again, we've created a group that will include ASL interpretation, and you can message one of the interpreters directly to be added to that. And if you don't wish to join a breakout room and you want to be in a quiet room for personal reflection instead, you can also do that now. So just put quiet in your Zoom name and we'll put you into that room. So for today's gathering, we're connecting the theme of plantcestral roadmaps and ancestors with the 10th design justice principle, which says, before seeking new design solutions, we look for what's already working at the community level. We honor and uplift traditional, indigenous, and local knowledge and practices. So as we enter into the breakout rooms, a prompt for your check-in is, what's already supportive for you in your relationships with plants and land? Who or what or where did you learn this knowledge and practice from? And here we really wanted to make space for, yeah, just honoring that you all are coming in with your own knowledge and lineages, and yeah, sometimes connecting with land may not feel accessible for many of us for lots of different reasons. And so starting from a place of what is already there and what you already hold. Yeah, we wanted to open with that. So we'll give just a second, and Victoria is going to help us get sorted into breakout rooms. And we'll have about 10 minutes in these rooms.
So for today, I am very excited to bring in and introduce Layla, who is going to be our guest practitioner today with Plantcestral roadmaps. So I'm definitely somebody that's more paper than screen. So I'm going to say a little thing and then I'm going to be reading from a piece of paper for the bio so I can get all those words right. But I just wanted to echo some of what Jody shared earlier about the timing, and also just grateful for the ways that we've already been listening, maybe in new ways to each other since we've started this series. So excited to welcome you into the space today, Layla. Layla K. Feghali is an ethnobotanist, cultural worker, and author who lives between her ancestral village in Lebanon and her diasporic home in California, where she was born and raised. Her dedication is the stewardship of eco-cultural remembrance and decolonization movements, and the many layers of relational restoration, systemic reckoning, and healing that entails. Feghali offers a line of plantcestral medicine, education, and other culturally rooted offerings and mutual aid efforts, with an emphasis on land-based ancestral practices from the crossroads, Southwest Asia and Northern Africa, and its diasporas. Her recent book, The Land in Our Bones, documents cultural, herbal, and healing knowledge from Syria to the Sinai, while interrogating colonialism and its lingering wounds on the culture of our displaced world. So for today, I want to really just welcome and say thank you for Layla, for all of the work that's been put and love that's been put into today before today. We're so glad to have you here and to begin this journey with you. Passing it over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Can I get like a quick temperature in the chat maybe? How you all are feeling today? How things are feeling as we settle into this space? Flowers, thank you so much. So, as Karina shared, I'm Layla. I am speaking to you actually from my ancestral village in Lebanon right now. And, oh, sweet, I like the emoji responses. Thank you. Good to know where people are a little bit, how folks are entering the space. And I want to just invite you all to, feel conversational through this process. So much of the work that I hope that we'll share today is very relational, and we're a very intimate group today. So a lot of the experience we have will be based on how we all show up, and it will be more of an emergent relational exchange between each other. And so thank you for being present and for coming with all of yourselves. So I'm here in Lebanon. I'm in my ancestral village in the north of Lebanon, the northern coast. And as Karina shared a little bit about my work, I wanted to just say a little bit more about what motivated my practice or what motivates it. I think so much of living in diaspora and disconnected from the ancestral places where my lineages have emerged for, you know, hundreds, thousands of years. Also, but, you know, feeling those presences in my body and in my home that I grew up with, but not really reflected through the world that I lived around for so much of my life, you know, pushed me to asking a lot of questions and just being kind of in a seeking posture around belonging, around truth, around justice, around healing, around how we mend some of these ruptures of just like memory and relationship and kinship and, you know, how we make meaning really of life when we live between multiple worlds. And we live in worlds that are sometimes more hostile than others to different parts of who we are and how we exist. So I have a background in movement building and mental health that has informed a lot of my work with plants, and will be very present in how I'm thinking about things and some of the ideas I'm sharing and some of the points of focus. And as right now I am in Lebanon, which is currently being assaulted by the Zionists alongside our siblings in Palestine. The plants that I've chosen today also will give us a chance to connect a little bit more to this land and to the people here and to the ways that we are connected and to the responsibilities and care that we're able to extend in being more responsive to these times that we are in. So I wanted to begin by just sharing some foundational knowledge and some ideas around plants and around remembrance and around the whys of this work as we go in, and some of the things that I have learned along the way. And so on this first slide, you can see, oh, no, we're still on. Yep, we're still there. Thank you. On this first slide, you can see our plantcestors remember us. And plantcestral is a word that I use a lot, which I'll share more with you about. And it is because our plants are our ancestors. They've been on the earth for millennia, longer than humans, and we've really evolved from them and through our relationship with them. And every single aspect of our relationship as species of this earth is intermediated by plants. The air we're breathing is because of our connection and relationship to plants. The food that we eat comes from plants, and they connect us in a very immediate and intimate way to all the elements, the life-making elements of this planet, and all the different species that also are in relationship to them and to us all the time. And, you know, besides that, they're also, because of their life-giving, their foundational life-giving energy, the plantcestors have also informed our ancestral cultures. They have been in a way, they carry memory, they carry connection, they carry the specific plants where our own lineages developed the ancestral plants that are a part of our lineages. They're a part of our bodies. They've built our bodies, but they've also built our cultures. They've informed the patterns that we have on our traditional textiles and the colors that they're made of, and the cosmologies and meaning-making paradigms that our ancestors have developed and you know, to express who we are. They make the instruments that our people play, our lineages play. They inspire so many aspects of who we are culturally, and so they carry memory. and in their memory and the stories that they carry, they connect to the memory in our own bodies and in our own lineages and help kind of wake that up inside of us. So I developed something that I call just like a methodology that I call plantcestral remembrance, that's very much based on how when we work with our ancestral plants and the plants of the places where we live right now, we're able to there are possibilities of healing and of remembrance and of reconnection to a lot of the things that have been lost, taken, silenced, suppressed in the process of colonialism and all these other violent systems that kind of separate us from these origin places. And that plantcestral remembrance developed for me as a way to kind of engage and reconnect with land and lineage from diaspora and start mending some of the ruptures of lost and fragmented knowledge, healing, memory, story, not to revert to the past per se, but to recenter in the power of who we are when colonialism is not defining our relationship to everything. And when we're able to just reconnect to these truths that sort of determine who we are as a species. So that's why I use the language remembrance. Remember, of course, means to, I think now we can move to the next slide. Remember means to, Victoria, would you mind moving us to the next slide? Thank you. Remember is to recall things that we've known in the past. As we know, that's what the word remember means, but it's also to remember. It's to mend our membership and our belonging to place. It's to recall and bring back together the dismembered parts and fragments and pieces of ourself and our worlds and our traditions and our lineages and our relationships to each other and to life. The earth connects us to our essence and to these source truths that do not change over time, in the sense that right now we might not feel very connected to a plant per se, but we are connected to a plant as long as we're breathing, as long as we're eating, as long as we're alive. We're connected to the earth, and the earth is determining our lives. And these basic elements of the earth, these basic life-making elements for me are like remembrance is about kind of returning and recentering that access, just the life-affirming access of the earth as the sort of center with which we understand life, with which we navigate our communities, with which we design our cultures and societies and cities, with which we reclaim these kinds of fundamental life-affirming possibilities of being. And so to remember is to return, and it is to access a liberatory way, because it is anchored in like a life-affirming truths of our interdependence on this planet as species that are related to a bunch of other species. And it is a remembrance because all of our lineages at some point began with deep intimacy to these relationships. And so it carries memory, and it carries a lot more story that our bodies also still harbor, because we are earth, we are land, our bodies are land, and we are constantly in conversation with these truths, even when they feel kind of suppressed or under the surface. So plantcestral remembrance is really kind of a really simple practices of relearning how to attune to and listen and ally with plants from our ancestral lineages, you know, through our bodies and through the land inside of us, with intention, and the way that those plants reawaken the generations of story and medicine, the kind of recalibrate our essence, recalibrate us to who we are. And as we return to these sort of primordial truths of our existence as a species on this planet, and as communities and the cultures that we come from originally, that really developed in response to these relationships with place and with land, when we had a more immediate kind of knowing and existing within just interdependence with the elements, which we still have, but we live in a way that has sort of diluted that reality for so many people living in you know, urban cities and the Western paradigms of practice that are kind of dominating our world. So it's plantcestral remembrance is about those collaborative relationships and return to our ancestral plants as kind of an avenue towards back home, you know, back home towards ourselves and towards the essence of truths that I feel and know have the ability to kind of recalibrate us into a more life-affirming world for all. And why does this matter? What's the relevance? You know, how does this really play out in these times and in this process? I talk in my book, which I go into these topics a lot more elaborately about, and you're all welcome to check that out if you want to. I talk about the cultures of severance, and for me, colonialism kind of marks this primordial wound, actually, kind of like a primordial parental wound, because one of the primary ways that it functions is to strip us from our connection to the land and to our land-based cultures and the ways that our generations have sustained themselves and defined themselves and cultivated understanding of who they are and survival in very basic ways through their direct relationship with land and with place. And because this is a place of power, this is a place of life, and so it's a place of power for us to have some kind of direct, immediate connection to the earth, which again, we always have, but to be conscious of it and to be able to interface with it intentionally and with, you know, just cultural mechanisms in place that reinforce it is such a threat to colonialism, because it is part of our self-determination. It's part of the way that our communities have cultivated cultures that are both life-affirming and that also preserve autonomy and allow us to sustain life from generation to generation. And so the separation from the land that colonialism explicitly and strategically and intentionally works on severing creates such a traumatic rupture in our beings and in our understanding and in sort of it's like a mother wound. It's like a primordial mother wound, because the life is our direct nurturance. You know, we're supposed to be able to cultivate that connection of care in order to survive. And so because colonialism intentionally and strategically disrupts that, it creates a type of trauma that makes us more vulnerable to all the other systemic kind of forms of violence that kind of rearrange our worldview. They rearrange our way of existing in our day-to-day reality to have to bend towards these exploitive systems rather than the kind of the balance and abundance and kind of give and take of reciprocity that we have calibrated to the places that we live on Earth. And so, you know, as we sever from our essence, you know, as we are severed from and taken from these kinds of foundational relationships of nurturance and survival, just basic sustenance, we're sort of rearranged and we're manipulated, and there becomes more, it kind of can create a cascade, or it's created a cascade of other kind of systemic violences that we have become more vulnerable to. And so when we reconnect to this source place, you know, because the earth is our source, no matter there, it's not it's a spiritual thing, but it's also not, it's just a really basic just species truth of that everyone knows. Because we are in an you know, an interdependent relationship with this planet and with the elements of this planet. When we reconnect to that and we give back into that relationship, when we start feeding the communication between us and these source places again, we rebuild power, and we rebuild resilience, and we rebuild a type of healing that is so much deeper than this plant has these chemical constituents that help this organ in my body. It recalibrates us spiritually, and you know, it recalibrates the paradigms and the worldviews that we exist in, and the ways that we imagine worlds, and the ways that we design the communities that we're a part of, and the ways that we care for ourselves and each other, and our ability to have like self-determined forms and community determined forms of access and life affirmation and power in every single sense. And it reconnects us to our lineages in the process. And through our lineages, we also are connected to forms of deeper power. So plantcestral remembrance, I think, plays actually a really powerful, though maybe not so linear, form of possibility around how we were able to just imagine and move through these new worlds. I'm so sorry, but there's actually someone knocking at my door, and they've knocked a couple times. Sorry, I'm village life. There's no planning around these things. Give me 1 second. So yes, so how do we do this? You know, how do we kind of reconnect to you know, plants? And I think we can move to the next slide now, actually. I forgot about the slides, as I knew I would. I sometimes talk about it as plantcestral poetics, and so plantcestral remembrance is sort of an invitation back towards the earth through working with our plants, because they're such an intimate, accessible part of our of this whole thing. They're such an intimate, accessible part of our lives and of our cultures and of our traditions. Of course, probably for those of you who are like, really, I don't have relationships with my plants of my lineage, but like, actually just think about food, you know, which is of course one of our most simple ways of thinking of the access points that we have in terms of our cultural relationships to plants. And so plantcestral poetics is kind of more of like the how do we come back into these relationships when we've been severed, because colonialism not only severs us through physically displacing so many of us from the places where we're from or where we've cultivated generational relationships to, because a lot of us come from migrational communities too, right? But it's also rewired how we relate to place right now where we are. And it's rewired the way that we think about land and the way that we think about the elements that we're engaging with every day. And it's kind of separated us from that in so many ways, just through the colonial education and infrastructures that we've built, which don't have to be, you know, severed in this way, but often are. Like, we don't really, a lot of people living in modern Western cities right now don't really think about where your water comes from, because you turn on a faucet and it comes out of your sink, and you really don't ever think about it coming or going, and you don't think about which river or which watershed it's actually coming from, but it is still coming from one. And we don't really think about the plant that, you know, we pass every day when we walk out our door as like a living plant, or the plants that we buy plastic wrapped in the grocery store, as, you know, plants that came out of the earth. And the, you know, we kind of have this sort of false disconnection that happens through just the forms that we engage in. And part of that is also because we've been really indoctrinated into linear, rational ways of being and relating and thinking as the only form of knowledge, and are very, a lot of us have just been very cerebral on purpose. You know, we've been rewired into these cerebral sort of ways of existing and of surviving within the modern world, because in the modern world, what you need to survive is money. And of course, all sources of money still come from land, hence colonialism being like a root problem, but we'll get more into that next session. But money comes from, you know, having this profession or that profession or this thing where you're sitting at a desk all day, and what matters is your ability to think in this particular way, in this particular form, et cetera, et cetera. So when we start reconnecting to plants, there's a lot that happens in terms of how we have to rewire kind of the way that we got used to thinking and being, in order to tune back into a language of land that doesn't necessarily speak in linear words that we can just read, and it doesn't necessarily reveal itself through only through, you know, what we know about this plant based on this book we read, or this, you know, scientific study. Although those things are also, you know, ways that we know, and we lean on those, and how, you know, each thing has its place. But plantcestral poetics is kind of an invitation to lean back into the ways that our bodies are vessels of knowledge, and that because our bodies know things through our senses, and it is, we are designed through our senses, our many senses, both our physical senses of smell, of sight, of hearing, of touch, and also through our perceptive senses of feeling and of association, and of, you know, noticing and just listening towards symbols and towards kinds of the kind of like the meaning between the line, you know, the words between the line, or the whatever, you all know what I'm trying to say, but my words are not coming out right, but I think you know what I mean. The poetry of things, which is where we, so plantcestral poetics is a return to first languages of really being in our bodies as a way to know, and returning to kind of empowering the sensory and sensual and kind of non-linear ways that we gather information from the plants and from our bodies when we're in relationship to the plants, in order to make meaning and knowledge and understand the communication. Thank you, Sol. So how we use we come back into simplicity and also complexity in some way, because we come back into nonlinear. We come back into what are the associations based on this thing I'm feeling, and okay, I did just have this thought because I'm used to being a thinker, but what is the pattern coming through with these thoughts? What are the synchronicities I'm noticing? What do I feel? How do I, when I see this plant and the shape of it and the color of it, it makes me think of so and so. And instead of being like, ah, that's just silly, we say, okay, let's empower this kind of less linear, more subjective, more sensory, more perceptive sort of way that we're interpreting something as a form of knowledge, and let's follow it and see where it takes us and how it unfolds and how it communicates with other people's senses. And that shape reminds me of this organ in the body, which is something actually in the plant world that they call the doctrine of signatures, and is how some of our early ancestors first learned about what the medicinal qualities of plants are and have been proved since science. You know, like a walnut looks like a brain. Oh, who knew? Walnuts are really good for your brain. So all of the ways that the land speaks, and that our bodies speak, and that our emotions speak, and that our senses speak, they're part of how the land emotes. And it's kind of an invitation back towards these softer ways of being, of feeling, of knowing, of connecting, of relating, and allowing kind of knowledge and understanding and relationship to kind of emerge from there. And we'll get, after our break, we'll drop into this together so it's less cerebral and more embodied, since that's kind of the whole gist of this thing. But let's, yeah, for now, maybe, are there any thoughts coming up for folks, or how's all this landing? Any questions? Any comments? Your teacher, Karen Rose, says plants do not need to lower their vibration to interact with us. We need to raise our vibration to interact with them. Yeah, and sometimes maybe it's not even a raising, it's just a shifting, right? Like, it's like we need to shift our perception. But I love Karen. Thank you for bringing her into the space. Yeah, it's a remembrance. It's just dropping into different parts of ourselves that have really been intentionally suppressed. And we can go into how gendered this is, of course, because all the things I mentioned are very gendered in our current dominant paradigm. And I don't think it's a coincidence how that all works in terms of the cascade of systemic violences, and the way that colonialism kind of builds on other forms of violence to sort of suppress some of these original ways of living and existing and being in connection to life. Are other folks, does anyone have any questions or thoughts? The nonlinear aspect reminds me of when my spirit guides have told me which herbs I need to use in ritual, or recently when a friend's ancestors guided me to pick a bouquet of flowers for a neighbor. Oh, that's so sweet. Yeah, exactly. Our dreams are another big one I didn't mention, but like just all these different ways that communication comes, and that I think we're taught to really be like, oh, that's just like a projection of something, and so therefore doesn't have information. And sometimes projections have information, even if it's not quite like 1 + 1 = 2. It is like, this is telling me something. So how do we drop back into what is being shared? A reminder, please read in front of your message if you want us to read your message out loud during the recording. Does that mean that I shouldn't read them if we don't want them read? Because my inclination as a facilitator is to read the messages. So can folks also tell me if you don't want me to read them? This is going to be a conversational process, so I'm really going to invite you all, because the rest of this time together is going to be mostly you. Just preparing you mentally for that. And yeah, please feel comfortable. And we're kind of, yeah, does anyone else have anything they want to share? Don't be shy. Otherwise, I'm on time for the first time in my life. Woohoo. Somatic perception seems to be the most accessible way for me to process with the plants. Yeah, me too. So that's another thing about the plantcestral poetics is one of the things I think that this process does is that it actually reacquaints us with how we, as individuals, also like how our systems perceive, how we make meaning and knowledge, what the specific forms, because I think we're all different, right? Some people I think are more like somatic and sort of like have sensations in their body, which I think is sometimes harder to interpret in this cultural context, right? In cultural context where we're used to having linear kinds of forms of knowledge where we're like, well, what does that sensation in my body mean? So you're kind of rebuilding your own internal language of interpretation between your own being and the world around you. And some people are more visual, and they see things and images come to mind. And some people are more cerebral and thoughts will come into their field that they're able to make sense of. And some people need to taste and feel things, and they need to just like be very in practical relationship and grow the plants and notice how it moves through different stages and be in the environment where it comes from to understand what's being communicated. And so it's a kind of an invitation back into our own way of knowing individually, because we're all so special and unique. And there's so many, and that takes the whole like kind of like there's just not one way, and there's not really like a wrong way either. There's like infinite ways, and it's kind of about reattuning to us. It's like a remembrance of our way and our language and our form of being able to attune. If we can't see, we still have all these other senses. If we can't hear, we still have all these other senses. We each are gifted with different ways of relating. Cool. Y'all want to drop into this a little bit? But we can have a break first. This has me thinking about the way vision comes to me. Always happening, sometimes overwhelming. I'm learning to orient towards its wisdom, even if it's coming from a place of fear. It feels like a body remembrance. Yes, it is like so much of deconstructing the ways we've internalized to feel about how we are, and also just the supports we no longer have, kind of to know how to digest and exist in different forms that are not just this linear sort of way. Thank you for sharing that. Can you say more about how listening to the body and first languages can be part of a collective process? Ooh, that is such a good question. So our next part, our experiential part, is gonna do better than me at actually expressing this, but one of the most amazing things about plants is that even though each of our bodies have their own highly unique specific way of receiving, some kind of information or connection, or having, just like all of our relationships with people are unique, right? Even if they're between us and the same person, it all kind of brings out its own layer. Is that when we collectively work with a plant together and we start to share our experiences, we start to see patterns and themes, and also kind of like puzzle pieces that sort of start to emerge, and we remember something through the reflection that we're having as multiple individuals within a collective form. And we're also able to, because the land carries memory of our collective experiences, like this land right here, right now, has witnessed these genocides, these massacres, these liberations, these fears, these pains, these wedding celebrations with all of their, the grape leaves and all these plants on the tables that have shared with us, these kitchen conversations, these generations of seed exchange, all of these things, the collective memory, all of it is also being experienced by our plants and the land and our bodies simultaneously. And so when we're listening to the body and the land, we are also attuning to a collective conversation, because we are an interdependent species and we are experiencing these things together, and we're experiencing intimate parts of our life with the land and with these plants and with each other. So the collective process informs the memory that the plants carry and that our bodies carry. And it also is part of what heals it. Or what can, anyways. I think that if no one has any other thoughts, maybe we can break for 5 minutes and come back. And please, did any of you all get a chance to bring your olive or rose parts or forms? Please bring them with you when you come back and have them accessible. Thank you all. See you in 5. Folks feel ready to continue? Yeah, okay. So now that we've talked a bit about these things, I want to give us a chance to kind of drop in and practice together. If you all have your rose or olive or rose and olive, I am going to guide us through a plant meditation. And I think for this, it would be best to just choose one which is calling you right now, or the one that you have available. And there's images on the screen of each of them. For those who do not have them, you can focus on the images, and I will guide us through a plant meditation and a way of kind of learning to attune to the senses that the plants are bringing up in us, that I learned from some of my herbal teachers. So I'm going to invite you to get comfortable where you are and in your body. If you want to, you can close your eyes or soften them and just kind of start to take notice of your internal state. You don't have to change anything, but just kind of take notice. Maybe take a couple of breaths and just allow your breath to support you in settling more deeply into your body, or just settling into your presence in this moment. Maybe take note and just mindfully pay a little closer attention to the sensations that you're having than you might normally. Notice any areas where you might be carrying tension or pain. Notice any areas where you might be feeling more expansive and soft. Perhaps you notice the texture of your clothing on your skin. Or the feeling of the weight of your body sinking into the chair you're on or the ground. And just quickly scan your being. Perhaps you're noticing that your thoughts are really active and it's hard to shut them off. Or there's an emotion arising for you. You don't have to change any of it, but just try to take notice of the details. And when you kind of have a sense of where your body is at right now, just gently from this soft place, reach for your plant in whatever form it is you have it. Touch or taste or just feel it. Maybe take a few, just bring it up to your mouth and nose and breathe it. If it's a physical plant or if it's a fragrance. Maybe anoint yourself with it, put it on your skin somewhere. And just continue now that you've taken the plant or felt the plant or you're connecting with it, continue to notice your body. To track the sensations. Perhaps you feel compelled to welcome the spirit of the plant or talk to it or ask it a question or introduce yourself. And just take notice of the sensations. Do they shift? Have any of the feelings that you noticed before shifted since introducing the plant into your system? Take some time to just sit with this. If you find yourself having trouble or getting distracted or just not knowing where to focus, just return to some of the sensations that you felt when we began and notice if any of them have shifted. You don't have to reach for anything, just a chance to just be. And to observe what surfaces. And slowly wrap up your time with the plant. Come back to our group. Maybe take a moment to look at their images. On the left of the slide, we have a Damascus rose, a photograph of a vivid pink Damascus rose and rosebuds in relief. One bold bloom appears in the foreground in full ruffle, its layers of petals defiantly indiscernible in number. Two pink rosebuds appear above and behind the bloom, another to the lower left of it, all supported by a thin green branch of serrated leaves. And on the right of the slide, we have two olive tree elders bordering what appears to be a low stone wall or foundations. Behind the stones appears to be a grove or forest. The trunks of the trees are wide, with intricate twists and layers of roots reaching towards the desert earth. The branches of sage-toned leaves reach upward above the tree line beyond into a sky that appears to be scattered with distant smoke or low gray clouds. And if folks can want to share what that experience was like for you, either in the chat or just unmic yourself, and maybe let us know what did you notice? Let us know which plant you chose to work with first of all, and what did you notice? What did you experience? Were there any feelings that stood out to you, or something about the process? Lisa says Olive took a few drops of flower essence and anointed with a little oil. Immediately felt tingly in my head, but sitting with it longer, it felt expansive and like a deep well. Oh, I love that. Thank you, Lisa. Other folks? Lindsay says, the softness of the rose petals in between my fingers felt soothing. Beautiful. Anna says, dried rose hips. I placed a single leaf on my tongue and allowed the flavor to resonate. The leaf is very old, but amazingly strong. Strong in flavor or strong in a different way? Strong in flavor. Thank you. Denise Shante says, I reconnected with a body butter with rose as the main plant made by someone in Baltimore that was gifted to me. Felt myself softening as the butter melted on my skin through touch and warmth. Closed my eyes and breathed with the aroma and sweetness. That sounds beautiful. Sounds like Rose really was calling this group, huh? Lindsay says the smell of rose conjured memories of my great-grandmother who was blind and loved wild roses. I love them too. There was a cooling and expansive quality, like a dewy, foggy landscape near the ocean. Oh, that's beautiful. That sounds very rosy to me. Karina says, for me, I connected with rose, one of the earliest plants I remember meeting. I remembered how there was nothing more beautiful than my grandmother's roses she grew on the dies of the trailer. How my heart knew that, and today it opens some in memory. So beautiful. Rose is a really special plant because it connects to so many different lineages and It's such a beloved grandmother plant. So many grandmas across this earth really love roses, so I love that. Joe says, smelling the olive helped bring me into the body and out of my head, and I could feel my body soften and relax a bit. Love that. Renee says, rubbing olive oil into my hands with focus on the relationship between the many ways in which this plant nourishes in versatile ways with the same offering, oil to eat and cooking, but also in cosmetic ways. Mirina says, olive oil of my people who are Greek, rubbed it on my hands, over my face, on my ancestral tattoos, dropped some in my mouth, danced in delight, pure joy, ancient body memory. Beautiful. Lindsay says, my great-grandmother was named Rose, and my mom shared it, was one of the only people she felt unconditionally loved by in her childhood. Rose is my first middle name after her. I wonder if Rose was with me today when I felt the petals. Oh, that's so tender. Both my great-grandmothers are named Rose, Lindsay. So, as we're seeing, Soul says, palm full of petals, breathing in deeply, I feel every tiredness and stress leave my body on the exhale. When I greet the rose, I feel seen, recognized, and see myself in those colors and patterns, whole body excited, sitting with our rose plantcestor. Here's a picture of the deep pink bloom in a beloved friend's garden. So beautiful. Thank you all. So even in this really brief experience in this intimate group, we can already see some patterns around just, there's a lot of grandmothers being evoked, as Rose likes to do. A lot of folks are talking about the softening and the sort of support in returning to our bodies that I think so many plants help us, just arrive and just having the chance to be in an embodied relationship in general. I heard the word softness and softening mentioned a few times. Oh, that's beautiful, Lindsay. Thank you. Wes says, I'm eating dinner. I took several olives out of the salad. I held one during the meditation, then ate them after. They were green and mild in flavor. They were good. I'm eating dessert now. That sounds wonderful. So thank you, Miro. Miro just dropped in a file that are some excerpts of my book where I invite you all to really sit with kind of more of the medicinal and cosmological and storied sort of layers of rose and olive on your own time. But as we, as we watch this, as we experience this together, just noticing the way that our bodies they allow us to begin to attune without even really needing to know these informations. So much of what Rose does, for example, is it does facilitate the softening and the connection. I noticed that a lot of people not only mention softening, but they also started sharing about some of the relationships and connections and associations in their life in a way that sort of softened the space and created a kind of intimacy. And so, as we work with plants, and this is just a brief exercise, but as folks work with plants in groups for longer durations, we start to see even deeper ways that revelation happens through our collective process of being together with our plants and with our bodies. But since these plants, as we kind of connect to these plants, and these two plants come from a few different places on the earth, including the lands of the Levant, and through them we connect to the people and places of the lands where they come from. Roses have connections to so many places in the globe, and olive, of course, is more of a Mediterranean specific plant. And I want to take a chance to, to just acknowledge that these plants also connect us to Palestine. and they connect us in a very embodied way to the memory and the life chains and the cultures and traditions of Palestine and Lebanon and the broader Levant region. And I want us to take a chance to really, be in this practice of listening with these plantcestors and with our bodies towards the intention of attuning to the wisdom that these plants might carry for us right now in communicating and of being of service to this part of the earth, which is going through such intense pain and intense possibilities of transformation and intense processes of what hopefully will be a decolonization process that we live through together and that we help facilitate. So I want you all to take some time now that we have about 10 minutes to actually be with these plants in our own practices. And I want to invite you to either continue a meditation if you liked the process of sitting with it with your body this way, or perhaps to pick up a journal and free write with the plant and to really, or maybe if you're a dancer and you like to move, to, carry the plant or take a little bit more of it and move through some movement in your space and just observe and notice what the movement in your body shares with you, wants to communicate with you. I think we can move to the next slide, actually. Sorry, Victoria. I skipped a few. I forgot. Here's another wild rose. This is a Lebanese wild rose, one of the kinds here. But anyways, we could go to the next one. So we also passed this. See, look, I'm sorry. I have forgotten about our slides. We can go to the next one. Yes, okay, here we are. We're where we need to be now. So to just take a chance to, draw, doodle, paint, vocalize or improvise a song, write a poem, just be with your body more, or whatever way that you feel called to sort of attune to this plant through your body and your spirit and your creative, expressive capacities. And to just maybe, ask the plant or ask the plant, what can we do to be of service right now? Or what is there a message you have for us around, or a connection or a story or something that we are meant to attune to that can support us in moving through some of our own sort of relationships and connections and efforts to be of service and of support to these lands that these plants that have generously blessed us through this short meditation have given us. What do they want to tell us about their lands, about these lands, about the people that they come from and that they love and that have loved them? So you can take 10 minutes to just go be in your process, whatever that looks like. Does anyone have any questions or clarifications? Okay, so go for it. Go for it. Oh, we're like actually don't have much time. I'm lying. We don't really have 10 minutes. Karina, am I confused? Are we actually 8 minutes? We're 5 minutes from the end of our entire session. Wow. Okay. Maybe then instead of 10 minutes, I think we need to shorten this, but we're not really going to have much time to actually process it. So maybe take 3 minutes. And sorry, I'm not sure. I must have missed some of my time checks. My bad. Take a few minutes to just reflect with that, and we'll come back and see where to go from there. So that was very brief, but we do have a break coming up. So I want to encourage you to, if you feel like it, to take the break to continue to deepen in that process. And we'll have some, Denise Shante will be holding a little bit more space for other kinds of integration. So you can feel free to integrate more of that. But I would like to use our last few minutes to just, I think we could go to the next slide, Victoria, for us to just take a moment to reflect on any insights that you had, that you want to share, anything that came through for you. And words and images. Oh, the slides are editable and words and images can be dropped directly at any time. So then you all can actually use this and just share later as well. Okay, sorry for this process. Lindsay is saying, during that process, I felt called to hold and smell rose petals while listening to a field recording I made of wind at the same time. Okay, thank you, Lindsay. But I will, if there's anything that did come up for anyone during this this specific, short, brief period, softness naturally requires protection. Okay, that's a very clear message. Okay. So folks can drop in more deeply if you want to use your break to continue to just deepen in that process, or if you would like to return to it later. This invitation, I can't really see what this says. I think opening your heart. I can't really read that right now on the screen. Oh, wild rose came to me. Open my heart so I can feel. Teach me how to be strong and protect. Okay, I'm going to look at this more when I can open the thing. So I want to invite folks to continue this and also to revisit now and again and notice what different folks in the group share. And we didn't have that much of a chance to kind of be in a meaning making process around these messages yet, but we will have our chance. And for now, I think the invitation is to just be spacious with time and take your time to really lean into some of these invitations and see what comes through for you and for our group. And we will continue to deepen with those themes in the next session, which I hope to see you again for. So, oh yes, and you have those files to connect to the plants more. And next time we'll also drop a little bit more in directly about land and colonialism. Oh, thank you. To be strong, yet soft, protected, yet open, beautiful. To love and other things. Kind of sounds to me like Rose has like a desire to support some of the like just softening and relational care or something around Palestine based on your messages. So I think that that's kind of closing our time, my time with you all directly. But we as a group are going to continue, and I believe we have another break.
Yes, we do. Thank you so much, Layla, for being in this time space with us and what we've moved through and flowed through so far. We are going into a break for about 10 minutes. And as Layla shared, this can be a moment for you to continue your reflections and interacting with these prompts on our slides that you'll continue to have access to. And when we return, it's more time to integrate, more time to reflect and be in conversation together. So that processing is continuing to be held. And we'll also close with some sweet announcements and continued invitations to share and reflect back. See you in 10 minutes. Thank you, Victoria, for being our DJ and tech support and magical person throughout this space. Thank you. Welcome back. We are easing into our care circle conversation, which is also an integration moment for us. We bring these inquiries into each gathering. We return to some of the same questions, and these are moments for us to make connections between what we've explored with Layla and our desires for collective care, mutual care within our lives, within our practices, and also within our worlds and what we're designing. We usually have 2 questions, but we're focusing on one today. I'll read that on the next slide. And the invitation is to reflect upon, what is this experience illuminating about what you need to be holistically resourced and cared for on a personal and collective scale. Also invite you to return to the integration questions that Layla asks as we're thinking about this holistically and as a shared through line for Layla's conversation and this invitation to reconnect with the plants and therefore reconnect with ourselves, and to really weave and get a little curious about these invitations that Layla has brought up with designing worlds, designing with our senses, that remembrance, that returning to lineages, and how that is connecting to your own life and also the creative practices and the worlds that you want to bring forward with collective care as part of that world. We'll have some time to do this. The invitation, again, you can directly edit the slides, which means you can add words, you can add images, and we'll keep this space open for about 5 minutes or so with some music, and Victoria will bring us to the other version of the slides where we can see some of the things that are being added. So we'll do that for a bit, and then we'll turn if anyone wants to share some overall reflections at the end. Thank you. Thank you. I have a question that came up. One of the ways that we can edit the slides and add your additions. So if you click on the slide on 26 or 27 or any of them that have these backgrounds that are showing some prompts, and you go up to the top and hover where it says text box. Thank you, Victoria, for being the pointer on that. If you click it, and then you'll see the cursor come up, and that's where you can begin to type. And then you can do the same if you want to drop an image. Go up to the top where the image box is, insert, and you can upload from your computer, you can search the web, you can now add GIFs and stickers as well. And thank you for asking that question and moving through the process of showing how that's done is something that I'll be more mindful of in the future. We have some shares here. I'm not going to read these out loud, but we've seen them popping up and being added. And again, you can continue to do this. These slides are living with you and don't have an expiration date unless Google decides that they don't want slide decks anymore. I'm going to make some space. If anyone wants to share, if you've shared something that you would like to voice out loud or just continue to be in conversation in the chat box, that's great too. Oh, I see, I'm noticing a message from Lindsay. Thank you for letting us know that this can be read. I couldn't figure out how to edit the slide, but wanted to add that when Layla mentioned her great-grandmothers also being named Rose, an image of our great-grandmothers in a circle together came to me. I felt a well of emotion come up in my belly. My heart felt expansive. Thank you for inviting us into that sensation with you, Lindsay. Something that I added to this slide, as Layla was sharing, I wrote down being in our bodies as a way to know. Those were words from Layla earlier, and it has me in the space of wonder of what would be transformed and in our creative expressions and relationships if we started there. If we were in our bodies as a way to know within every process, every experimentation, every strategy, every dream, every conversation. Is that softening of that body butter on my hand, on vessel as one way that I'm always creating and energy is coming through, is an attunement and way that I know I want to be cared for and entering spaces. We are going to transition. Thank you for the conversations that are happening in the chat as well. Continue adding and being in conversation with each other, async and through these slides. I'm going to pass it over to Karina, who's going to guide our closing.
Thank you for the pass, Denise Shante. Yeah, so as we're closing, I'm going to begin the closing with how I should have begun my opening, which is a description of myself. So I am a bald-headed white person with some blue light glasses that tend to get dirty from the oil I put on my face. And so I am shiny on the camera, wearing a keffiyeh that's black and white with an orange and kind of multicolored floral dress. My background is blurred and no one can really make out what's behind me. There's a quilt and it says, there's always a way. And so from there, I'm going to share these announcements. And I'm going to start with just thanking Layla for everything shared today, the space held today, and the ways that we were invited to begin to practice. So as we all know, if you've been here with us in our experiences of care circles and practice spaces in the past, this is part 1 of 2 parts. So Layla will be back with us. I'm going to first announce this next event and then kind of share what we can do from now until then to build us into this next space we'll be holding together, which is our practice space, Plantcestral Roadmaps. That will be on the 27th, which is July 27th, and it's a Saturday. I'm going to be sharing the time in Eastern Standard Time, just reminding folks if you're joining from another time zone to make that adjustment. So on Saturday, the 27th, we'll be gathering back at 11 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard. And during that time, we'll be continuing the explorations from today. We're going to be getting into land, sovereignty, plant lineages, and movement building. We'll talk about how plantcestral connections relate to resistance. What does land teach us about colonialism and our defiance in the face of it? How might our own inner ecologies trap us in states of despair and stagnation that keep us from being part of collective liberation movements? And how might the land and our own lineages hold and support us through growth, steadfastness, and action? Through collective reflections, plant meditations, and writing practices, we'll be deepening into the relationship with our own ancestral plant of choosing. We welcome you to show up as your full self with all of your emotions and lived experiences, and to participate in the ways comfortable to you. So there are some ways to prepare for this gathering. And first, I want to lift up what we've already been in practice with today. So today we were taught a practice, and that practice was a listening practice, an asking and a listening practice to one of 2 plants, rose or olive, whichever one you connected with today. And the question that we're asking, and Layla can pop on if I get it wrong, but the question that I asked today was, how can I be of service? And I asked that of rose. And specifically, it's how can I be of service to Palestine as the home and as the native place that both rose and specifically also these roses that were shared on and that you saw on screen today, and also the olive tree. So an invitation is to return to that practice, return to that listening, and to also return to slides 22 and 23, which were the spaces where you could share out what came up for you when you listened after asking the question, how can I be of service to Palestine? How do you want me to be of service to Palestine, to either rose or olive? Also want to share that in preparation for this practice space, there's an invitation for you to do some gathering. What we're asking for is for you to please bring some form of a plant from your own ancestral lands or cultures. A reminder that spices and many things that we cook with are plants. And so it doesn't have to be something new that you've never, worked with before. It's probably already in your kitchen if you cook. And if not, it's probably something you're familiar with in some way. So just reminder that this can be also in any form that is accessible to you. Some examples of that are hydrosol, fresh or dried branch, maybe of a wild version of that flower, Maybe there's a place you know it grows and you could take some, an essence, a tincture, an infused oil, a tea, maybe a dish that features it heavily. Reminder that when you're thinking about your ancestral lands or cultures, a great place to start that already came up today is grandparents. And you can think of cultural food, garden plants you associate with grandparents or elders as a really great starting place. If this is not accessible in terms of any tangible forms of the plant, a reminder that videos and images, drawings, and other ways of being with that plant is also acceptable and a way to join us in that same process as we gather on the 27th. I know that that might be kind of new for some folks. And so just going to name right now, before any questions get asked, that there will be an email with more information about this practice, about this process, so that you don't have to get it all from my words right now. That email, as well as some more detailed prompts around choosing a plant, will be sent after today. And a reminder as well that in that sort of follow-up email that we send out, the slides will be part of it, and you can log back in if for whatever reason you kind of lose the link from the chats today. I want to quickly pop over to Layla and see if there's anything that is missing or you'd like to add around kind of prep for our next session together.
I think you did great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you.
I did just add one thing actually in the chat, that if folks don't know where their ancestral lineages are from, you can just work with a plant that's calling you, that you feel connected with right now, or one that you grew up with, or you can work with bay leaves if you want to support more of a reconnection process of revelation.
Thank you so much for that. And that's something I'm going to repeat now, just for folks that are listening, that if there is, you know, any rupture there or not knowing how to connect to those ancestral lineages, Layla just shared in the chat that, you know, you can work with other plants or any plants that's kind of calling to you. Maybe it's been coming up a lot, or you've been noticing it suddenly on the walk that you've taken, the same walk, you know, suddenly this plant is coming up to you. Maybe that's the plant to work with, or bay leaf, which is another option, and that will support your reconnection process. Thank you so much, Layla. Additionally, I'm just going to share that there will be a worksheet that's shared out. This worksheet will be shared out to all those folks that are registered by the 18th of July. So if you're here with us today, or you're listening to this video off, you know, asynchronistically, and it's before July 18th, go ahead to the link and register so you can get this worksheet in time for our gathering on the 27th. We'll also be able to, you know, have all those emails in that, all the details in that email as well. Next slide, thank you. And to follow with our announcements, I know we're slightly over time, so forgive my speed of speaking. I am from Boston, and you will soon hear it. Our arena page is a place that you can kind of learn about what we have going on, the lineages of the DJN Care Pod work, and tap into different resources that we've shared along our journey so far. That information is going to be on this slide and is just the usual arena landing. Next slide. It's also been shared in the chat. And this last piece is special. It's something that we've been journeying with every time we've been together. And so this is something called our Care Be document. And this is an invitation for you to return to this space on your own, and for you to fill in that statement with your own words. What can care be? Tell us on that statement. And that document is shared in the chat. It's also going to be in this slide deck for ease of finding it again. And so that's something we've been doing every time after these care circles and practice spaces, is just inviting folks to take part and participate in that document's birth and being. And next slide. And this is the end. So if you can hold tight for about 30 more seconds, we'll be heading out. But thank you all so, so much for today. We were talking a little bit in between breaks and just noting the portal of time that today felt like it was. And so I hope that as you're in your own space, in your own world and experience, as you head back into the space that's yours to be. And just thank you so much for your presence and the ways that you showed up today, and potentially, you know, maybe showed up with some open
I'm just a tree in the middle of a forest. I'm not asleep. I'm just resting my soul. I'm just a tree in the